Monsignor Moses Carmona Rivera, Pillar of Traditionalism in Mexico, Part 6, the Excommunication and the Formation of the Trent Catholic Union. The religious culture of Father Carmona was beyond doubt, as was the sincerity of his love and zeal for the good of the Church. Those who knew him were totally convinced of this, but some of them thought that it was impossible, despite the evidence and arguments, that error could proceed from the Vatican. At first glance, it would seem that all the priests, having had some preparation, should have understood what was happening inside the Church. But this was not the case. Some of them knew it but conformed. Others saw it but didn't understand. And still others, like Father Carmona, saw it, understood it, and decided to oppose the conciliar reforms that were being taught, since they were contrary to what the Church had taught for 2,000 years. Of course, the last position, precisely because it is the thorniest, was accepted by only a few. This heavy cross Father Carmona accepted to carry for more than 50 years of his priestly life. However, the crossroad Father Carmona was undergoing was viewed with good eyes by very few, because only very few understood that in the present times God is punishing man for his infidelity. These are times of darkness because truth is being eclipsed. Some see part of the brilliance, and some see also nothing. Some catch only a glimpse of it, while others simply deny it. Some don't see it because they don't want to. But even worse, others seeing it don't understand it. Why? Can it be because of the mystery of iniquity that St. Paul speaks of in 2 Thessalonians 2:7? This is why many thought that Father Carmona was mistaken and wished to bring him back into the fold. One of these good souls was Sister Maria Soledad de la Eucharistia, who in an affectionate letter wrote, quote, I have been informed that you, beloved Father, have accepted ideas that put you in grave danger. This saddens me. I have been increasing my poor prayers to obtain for you, my esteemed Father, that divine light will fill you with truth, and that you will have the courage to recognize your error. End quote. Father Carmona receives many pleas like this one in his long years of struggle in the defense of the Church. He received these words attentively, but they did not alter the firmness of his position, which was well grounded. These requests coming from sincere souls were simply a lack of understanding on their part and, in the end, made his struggle more meritorious. In the middle of 1977, the Temple of Divine Providence would be blessed by its parish priest, Father Moses Carmona. In August of that same year, engineer Anacleto Gonzalez Flores, son of a well-known martyr, sent Father Carmona a supportive message, surely due to the calumnies that his enemies were uttering against him. Engineer Flores wrote as follows: Esteemed Father Carmona, great was the rage of the disciples of the heretic Arius against St. Athanasius, whom they tried to calumniate, accusing him of every imaginable crime. Great is the impotent anger of the post-conciliar heretics against you because of your defense of the eternal doctrine of the Catholic Church, and now they resort to calumny. May God continue to help you in your valiant struggle for the truth. The life of Father Carmona, as we saw in the previous section, and shall see again in this one, was truly that of a soldier of Christ in perpetual battle, and this was his heroic achievement. He always fought. He defended and attacked. He fell and arose. He spoke and was silent, but he never did rest. What physical, mental, and emotional fortitude! were necessary to remain in such a long and exhaustive battle. In those days, Father Carmona received a letter from Mr. Ibanez, who asked him to cease the controversy he had with the Bishop of Acapulco in order to avoid a major scandal. He stated that the bishop, supported by the Mexican ecclesiastical hierarchy, was completely marginalizing him. In a word, he was asking him to make peace with Bishop Belo Ruiz. Father Carmona answered Mr. Ibanez in his well-known style. Quote, "From what church was I excommunicated? Can Bishop Bello excommunicate me from the modernist church without being a member of it? Could he excommunicate me from the Catholic Church when he separated himself from it by being a modernist?" After reminding him that modernism was condemned by Pope St. Pius X, he concludes, quote, "Tried as I am to the divine truths that the Church has taught always and everywhere, and nobody can change, I indignantly reject the peace that you propose to me, because that peace is not the peace of Christ, but the sad peace of the cowards who, without fighting, surrendered and betrayed the divine deposit." End quote. And if by chance his conviction was not made clear, he concludes, "I am willing to withstand anything, even infamy, before apostatizing." By May of 1978, Father Moses Carmona writes to engineer German Herasti, director of the EVC Society, editorial Catholic radio diffuser of religious instruction publications, the EVC Society, lamenting that they were so faithful to Catholic orthodoxy once, and that now they had turned in favor of Vatican innovations, tending to false ecumenism and bad translations of the Bible. Disillusioned, Father Carmona asks, "How can you agree with all these things? How can you now accept what before you indignantly rejected? How is it possible that the EVC Society is now teaching the opposite of what it taught before? I'm dismayed. How is it possible that my dear Mr. Herasti, so eminently Catholic until now, apostle of the religious instruction, has accepted modernism condemned by Pope St. Pius X?" He concludes emotionally but determinedly, quote, "If the EVC Society priests, in following this route that has been marked out for them by the destroyers of the Church, if the malicious modernism continues to influence it, even if we deeply love it, even if it is entrenched in our heart, even if the pain destroys us, we shall renounce it." Probably even before September 1978, Father Carmona maintained correspondence with Father Adolfo Zamora, because during this month they were already speaking about baptisms and marriages performed in some towns in the state of Guerrero. Father Carmona suggested Father Zamora keep a register of the administration of said sacraments and to take necessary precautions to avoid irregularities. He also suggested that, owing to the lack of churches because of the present circumstances, a worthy house may be used in substitution for them. In 1980, Father Carmona, for the first time, sent a letter to Father Carlos Hernandez, Adolfo Zamora, Esteban Lavanganina, and Pedro Toledo, exhorting them to continue adhering to the Trent Union, quote, "in which we have accomplished such glorious battles," end quote. He reminds them of what their mission is and how to accomplish it. Quote, "Our mission is well defined: to rescue so many faithful souls seduced and deceived by progressive clerics. For this, my dear priests, we must impose on ourselves great sacrifices, and we must treat them with great charity," end quote. 8 years after deciding for the Church of all time, Father Carmona became a leader after the demise of Father Joaquin Sainz y Arriaga he naturally assumed leadership among the traditionalist priests. In July 1981, Father Francisco Silva wrote the follows to Father Carmona. Do not continue to deny what the whole church world continues to proclaim. One holy Catholic and Apostolic Church, and do not continue deceiving so many humble and simple people, completely ignorant of their religion. Father Carmona answered in his accustomed style and rebuked him because Father Silva was coercing faithful traditionalists so they would not assist at the Holy Mass that he, Father Carmona, was going to celebrate. Quote, you should respect the right of these people to assist according to the dictates of their conscience, according to the proclamation of Vatican II in the document about religious liberty, in respect to the characteristics notes of the Church referred by Father Silva. Father Carmona answered, if you keep insisting, you will never be able to demonstrate that the Church you defend is one holy Catholic and Apostolic, because it cannot be one if it has broken its unity. It cannot be holy because it has become mundane. It cannot be Catholic if it has become syncretistic. And it cannot be apostolic if it has reneged on its past. Father Carmona knew that since he decided for the tradition of the Church, his life in the future could be a true via crucis, as it was most effectively. He made the defense of the Church on two fronts, one in his personal relations with his faithful and with his adversaries, and another one, very important, through his correspondence. By the quantity and content of his letters, we deduce that a good part of his time, limited due to his parochial responsibilities, he dedicated to his correspondence. One of these lengthy, well-written letters is to one he sent to His Excellency Bishop Jose del Pilar Quezada, Bishop of Acapulco, in which Father accepts the accusations that rage against him. With healthy irony and rich argumentation, Father Carmona writes as follows. I didn't need to be very perceptive to guess what they accuse me of. 1. That I celebrate in Latin. 2. That I celebrate the traditional Mass. And 3. That I speak about the Pope. I am lost. Who is going to defend me from the implacable justice of my furious judges? I certainly committed all these horrible crimes. Oh, not only did I commit them, Your Excellency, also committed them innumerable times and continue to commit them. Do I intend with this to excuse myself? I know that this is impossible because my culpability is known by everyone. Yes, I am guilty. I have committed the iniquity of giving my respectful obedience to the dogmatic Council of Trent. Yes, the Council of Trent, when it speaks of the holy sacrifice, says in chapter 8, through the Mass contains much instruction for the faithful. It has nevertheless not been deemed advisable by the Fathers that it should be celebrated everywhere in the vernacular tongue. In Canon 9, if anyone say that the Mass ought to be celebrated in the vernacular tongue only, let him be anathema. I am also culpable, Your Excellency, of still celebrating with priestly vestments, because I have also let myself be led by the ignoramus Council of Trent that says in Canon 7, if anyone says that the ceremonies, vestments, and outward signs, which the Catholic Church uses in the celebration of the Mass, are insensitivities to impiety, rather than stimulants of piety, let him be anathema. Father Carmona continues, am I also culpable, Your Excellency, by refusing to give communion under both species of bread and wine, for blindly believing the Council of Trent, which I judge to be inspired by the Holy Ghost? And when speaking of Holy Communion, says in chapter 1, this Holy Council, instructed by the Holy Ghost, declares and teaches that laymen and clerics, when not offering the sacrifice, are bound by no divine precept to receive the sacrament of the Eucharist under both forms, and that there can be no doubt at all, salva fide, that communion under either form is sufficient for them to salvation. And in Canon 1, If anyone says that each and all the faithful of Christ are by a precept of God, or by the necessity of salvation, bound to receive both species of the most holy sacrament of the Eucharist, let him be anathema. Am I culpable, Your Excellency, of still believing that Jesus Christ at the Last Supper instituted a true and proper sacrifice, and that he ordained his apostles, priests, that they may offer it, and that he precisely created it because the Council of Trent, in its decrees pertaining to the sacrifice, in Canon 2 establishes, quote, if anyone says that by those words, do this for a commemoration of me, Christ did not institute the apostles, priests, or did not ordain that they and other priests should offer his own body and blood, let him be anathema. Am I culpable, Your Excellency, because I still celebrate the abominable Mass codified by Pope St. Pius V? And I celebrate because I believe that I have the right to celebrate because he, the Pope, in his papal bull, Quo Primum, says, by the present disposition and in name of our apostolic authority, we concede and accord that this same missal may be followed totally in the same high Mass and low Mass in every church, with no scruples of conscience and without incurring any punishment. Condemnation or censure can be validly used, freely and illicitly and in perpetuity. And in an analogous manner, we have decided and declared that the superiors, administrators, canons, chaplains, and other priests of any name that have been designed or religious of any order cannot be obliged to celebrate Mass in any different manner than we have established, and that nobody, whoever it may be, will antagonize or force them to change the missal or to annul this precept, instruction, or modify it, but that it will always be in force and valid with all its strength. It is possible that my ignorance makes me value documents that have expired and does not help me to discover the enchantment and values of the new Mass. Every day more and more simplified, more entertaining, and as theologian Vincent declares, horribly far from the theology of the Catholic Holy Mass, as it was formulated in the Council of Trent. Am I culpable, Your Excellency, of believing in the true presence of Jesus Christ in the sacred Eucharist, and in exhorting my faithful people not to approach if they are conscious of having committed a mortal sin and not gone to confession before they have received the sacred communion? Am I culpable, Your Excellency, of believing that the priest still has the power of pardoning sins and also retaining them, and to believe that by practicing this double power, the faithful need individual confession? Am I culpable of rejecting communal absolution because it is invalid, except in case foreseen by the Church, such as the sinking of a ship, earthquakes, or soldiers before battle? My error is precisely opposing with all my strength this Marxist-Leninist Church. Am I culpable, Your Excellency, of believing that bishops must be guardians of the faith that Christ imposed on them, a terrible responsibility of guarding it in all its integrity? I am culpable of being disobedient, and all because of being attached to a theology that has expired since the luminous Vatican II Council. My indolent ignorance impedes me from seeing, and this because I am antiquated, and now that everything has evolved, Christ and his doctrine has also evolved, and therefore ecclesiastic authorities must be obeyed even if they preach another Christ, another gospel. And he concludes by saying, I, ignorant, prefer to continue being alienated. I unite myself to the bishops that in various parts of the world raise their voice in defense of the divinely instituted church, and the bishops that do not remain silent, even if the new church looks upon them as a nuisance, and even if they humiliate and impoverish them, as the twice martyred Hungarian cardinal And I want to be united to bishops and priests who have worthily remained unwavering. Let this valuable letter serve as a conclusion to this section, in which we have presented the first years when Father Carmona opted for the Church of all times, the only church, the traditional church. And even though Father Carmona's position has been very clear, we don't want to finish this section without making a brief reference to the price he had to pay for maintaining his fidelity, excommunication. And even though we cannot find any document that guarantees it, we believe because of the reference regarding him, extracted from a letter or article signed by Mr. Enrique Salinas, entitled Father Carmona not excommunicated, not parish vacant. This article seems by its form to say that Father Carmona was excommunicated by the heretical Bishop of Acapulco, and also Acapulco's press in its edition on Friday, December 10th, 1976, informs us, well, one, that the excommunication of Father Carmona will be made known momentarily. Two, that the expiatory temple of the Divine Providence will be declared a vacant parish. Now, these declarations were made by the Vicar General and official spokesman of the Bishop of Acapulco, Father Angel Martinez Galicia. Mr. Salinas denied the validity of the excommunication, arguing that they can't separate Father Carmona from the Conciliar Church because he never was a member of it. And he also points out the expiatory temple of the Divine Providence was built by Father Carmona with the contributions of his faithful, especially local tenants at the Central Market, and they want Father Carmona to be the one in charge. It seems this rumor was made clear months later, because in a letter signed by Anacleto Gonzalez Flores, we believe in 1977, Father Michael Andre from France states the following: Father Carmona is well and relaxed. They had not excommunicated him officially until Monday of last week, at which time they submitted an excommunication decree, Late Sentencia, from the bishop of that place. The excommunication is not valid, and it has been pointed out by Father Barbara in Rome last year. And as it has been pointed out by Father Sainz Iaraga, Father Carmona continues in his parish as many thousands of Catholics support him. Of course, for Father Carmona, the excommunication was invalid, which he made clear in an extensive letter which he sent in response to an acquaintance of his, in which in his own particular way he answers, quote, I would like to think that you believe that when a priest is excommunicated, as I have supposedly been, he loses his priestly character. Father Carmona considered his excommunication totally invalid, and so did the traditionalists of Mexico and the world. The faithful in the parish of the Divine Providence, far from being intimidated, remained faithful to their beloved Father Carmona. By 1980, approximately 8 years of the active traditionalism had passed in Mexico. Aside from Father Carmona, these priests were found: Father Carlos Hernandez, Father Adolfo Zamora, Father Esteban Lavagina, Father Pedro Toledo, and others. Each of them was independent, but it was Father Carmona who actually took leadership due to his capability, the firmness of his convictions, and his demonstrated valor in defense of the faith. The proof of his natural leadership and his simplicity is found in the words he directed to Fathers Lavagina and Toledo. Quote, you can't imagine how unworthy I feel when, considering my nothingness, I see myself nevertheless obliged by the actual circumstances in which we find ourselves, making use of an authority that I lack, because I am not more than you, but the least of all. And for this I beg you to forgive me, my beloved priests. By this time, his virtues were known by some traditionalist groups in Europe, and his name was among candidates considered for consecration. But one of the very traditionalist bishops, who was aware of the origin of the crisis in the Church, was in the Vatican itself. Monsignor Took, Bishop of Vietnam, who after being exiled by the communist government of his country lived in Germany. The Trent Catholic Union. Father Carmona transcended in his struggle to preserve the tradition of the Church, not only individually as a parish priest in his temple of the Divine Providence, but also through an important organization of national dimension and international renown called Union Catholica Trento, Trent Catholic Union. This association, formed by clerics and lay traditionalists, was born of the need to defend the Holy Church from the modernist attacks, under the principle that unity makes strength. Our beloved Father Carmona worked unceasingly in the UCT during 15 years, 1976 to 1991, as the national president. Miss Gloria Riestra, who acted as general secretary of said organization, explains the beginning of the success of the glorious Trent Catholic Union. The priest Juan Correra and Gloria Riestra were co-founders during the life of Reverend Father Sáenz y Arriaga. Gloria had spoken about a plan that she had found a Catholic union that would encompass the traditionalists in Europe, the United States, and Mexico, and would present a common front of work and mutual help and resistance against the new church. In Europe, Father Sáenz was their liaison. In Mexico, the members knew Gloria at the national level and through the daily news of Garcia, Valencia, and other publications. Father Sáenz did not think this plan was convenient because he considered that the union could be infiltrated and everybody excommunicated at the expense of their work and other circumstances. This was the situation when Father Juan Carrera went from Guadalajara to Tampico to visit Gloria, soliciting her collaboration for the realization of the plan for traditionalist unity, similar to the one she had in mind. They decided to work together, studying everything concerning its fulfillment. Gloria communicated Father Carrera's visit to Father Sáenz, who seemed to be interested. He then visited Father Carrera in Guadalajara, but everything was suspended because Father Sáenz did not decide anything. And Gloria did not want to do anything without Father Sáenz's consent. His collaboration was indispensable because of his influence over traditionalism in Mexico and his knowledge of different groups and different places in the country. Now, after Father Sáenz's death in 1976, Father Carrera and Gloria started the project of the union, counting on the support of traditionalists who were interested in the project, among them friends of Father Sáenz. Now, Gloria sent a message to Mexican and foreign groups, communicating to them the plan for union and soliciting adhesion of those who would accept. Now, none of the Europeans responded, but in Mexico the project began, starting with the immediate adhesion of various known traditional priests, among them Father Moises Carmona. Now, once the union was established, the unification of the existent Mexican traditionalist groups was brought about, minus a few exceptions. The rescue or consolidation of the possessions of various churches in the whole country was brought about, and the same are still in possession of the traditionalists. The organizing committee elected Father Moises Carmona as national president of the union, and at the same time president of the priestly council and delegate for the instruction of dogma, morality, and philosophy. Now, in 1976, the union was officially made known at the national level in a press communique in the city of Atalac. I'm not able to pronounce that name, but I'm going to leave it at that. Morelos on September 21st, 1976. On that occasion, Father Moises Carmona celebrated a solemn high mass in the church that was in possession of traditionalists. At the time, Father already been excommunicated by Bishop Luis Bello and retained possession of his church of the Divine Providence in Acapulco, Guerrero, supported by his faithful. After the death of Father Sáenz, Gloria had taken Trent magazine under her wing. This magazine, which had been directed by him, provided her a larger communication with traditional organizations in Europe. And by this means, the Union was made known to those countries, motivating great interest in it. Now, Father Carrera was advanced in age when he took the initiative to found the Union. It constituted a great sacrifice for him to make the plans and contacts without being able to assist the reunions. He initially named the Union Catholic Tridentine Rescue Union. Eventually, this name was simplified to Tridentine Catholic Union, which finally became the Trent Catholic Union. The union began to dissolve after Monsignor Carmona's consecration for two principal reasons. First, since Mexico now had a new bishop, it was convenient that everything be under his orders by natural authority of his investiture, being assisted in his duties by the faithful Catholics. Second, the demise of some of the leaders and the incapacity of others being of illness. The latter offered to collaborate with Monsignor Carmona in anything that was possible for them. And during the time that the union lasted, Gloria Riestra was the Secretary General and editor of Trent magazine. Father Juan Carrera was not able to see Father Carmona consecrated a bishop, which would have highly pleased him because of his wish that we should have a bishop. In our next section, we'll see how Father Carmona was selected for episcopal consecration.